July 1789, a furious crowd in Paris stormed the Bastille. But they weren't just storming it for liberty. They were storming it because the financial system keeping their country alive had collapsed. For years, the French monarchy pretended it was eternal, wrapped in pageantry and divine right. But beneath the chandeliers of Versailles, the French state was bankrupt. The revolution didn't begin with philosophy. It began with debt, inflation, and bread that cost more than a day's wages. The guillotine wasn't forged in iron. It was forged in ledgers. And if you think this is just history, think again. The same mistakes that destroyed the French monarchy, reckless borrowing, unfair taxation, and paper money spiraling into worthlessness, still echo in today's financial system. Let's rewind to the 18th century. France was one of Europe's wealthiest nations, with fertile land and global ambitions, but it had a structural problem. Its financial system was archaic and corrupt. While Britain had created the Bank of England and a modern bond market, France clung to older systems. Taxes were collected by private tax farmers who paid the king a lump sum, then squeezed peasants mercilessly and pocketed the difference. The result was a state that bled money at the top while suffocating its base. The wars of the 18th century exposed these weaknesses. Supporting the American colonies against Britain may have looked like sweet revenge, but it was financial suicide. By the early 1780s, the French crown had borrowed over 1 billion livres to fund the conflict. Debt payments alone consumed over half of all royal revenue. Imagine running a business where more than 50% of your income goes straight to paying interest, and you're still borrowing more. That was France, and while Versailles glittered, ordinary people bore the weight. The tax system exempted the richest classes, the nobility and clergy. The third estate, the commoners making up 90% of the country, paid everything. Bread accounted for up to 70% of a worker's daily spending. When harvests failed in the late 1780s, prices doubled. Riots over bread broke out. Long before the storming of the Bastille, the monarchy tried to reform, but privilege blocked the way. By 1788, the government couldn't get new loans. Creditors refused to lend. That year, a severe grain shortage pushed bread prices to record highs, igniting hunger across the country. In desperation, King Louis XVI summoned the States General. It was supposed to solve the fiscal crises. Instead, it opened the floodgates of revolution. The people realized the truth. The system was designed to keep them poor. Soon after, the Bastille fell. But what most history books leave out is what happened next. The new revolutionary government inherited the same old problem: an empty treasury and a mountain of debt. It needed cash. And so, the National Assembly turned to what looked like a brilliant solution. In 1790, they confiscated the vast lands of the Catholic Church and issued a new paper currency backed by it, called the Assignat. At first, it seemed like genius. But paper money has a curse. Once politicians see it works a little, they can't resist printing a lot. The government issued assignats far beyond the value of the land backing them. Inflation accelerated. By 1795, the currency was practically worthless. People carried stacks of paper to buy a single loaf of bread. To make matters worse, Britain flooded France with forged assignats, waging economic war. The social consequences were devastating. Savings were wiped out. Riots broke out in markets. The government's answer was price controls, which only pushed trade underground. Radical leaders like Robespierre turned economic failure into political terror. Thousands were executed, not for treason, but for hoarding grain or undermining the currency. Inflation had mutated into blood. By the mid-1790s, France was a nation exhausted. The revolution had promised freedom but delivered financial chaos, and in that vacuum, a military strongman rose, promising order. His name was Napoleon. When he seized power, one of his first acts was creating the Bank of France to restore confidence in money. The people, exhausted by years of inflation, welcomed it. Napoleon's military genius is famous, but without this financial reset, his empire might never have stood. The deeper lesson is this: financial systems are the skeleton of political power. When a government can't pay its debts, when people lose faith in its currency, and when the price of bread doubles, no throne is safe. This isn't just a story of the past. Look around today. Central banks flood economies with liquidity to buy time. Inflation, once a relic, has returned to punish savers and workers. The French Revolution reveals the danger of believing that laws alone can protect us. Real wealth isn't paper promises. It's assets, skills, and independence that don't evaporate when governments print their way out of trouble. The rhyme of the French Revolution is a warning. When governments borrow beyond their means, when elites evade the burdens carried by the people, and when money itself loses trust, collapse follows. It was not just about liberty, equality, and fraternity. It was about debt, inflation, and bread. And if you think we are too sophisticated to make the same mistakes today, remember teas, so did the Bourbons. If this gave you a new perspective, hit subscribe. History has the answers. I'll show you where to look.